the relationship of addiction and fighters, you know, and because that movie's all about, you know, Dick Eklund really struggled with drug addiction. He was a crackhead and, you know, had a lot of issues with that. And that bled into his brother's life of fucking being just creating all kinds of chaos in his brother's fighting career. And both of you guys, I think, have been very open and honest about your addictions throughout your life. And what do you think it is about the relationship between finding yourself in a sport like boxing, a violent contact sport like boxing, and the mental mechanisms that contribute to addictions, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or gambling, whatever it might be? You know, how do those things seem to coexist frequently in very successful fighters and athletes? You know, in the NFL, you see it all the time as well. You know, I myself have definitely had my issues with addiction, from drugs to sex, etc., and alcohol. And I know that my football career fed directly into that. And I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on why are those things, you know, happening at the same time very frequently.
Well, first of all, it's accessible. It's there, especially
the access.
Once you reach the access. I mean, and for me, it took place. The drugs and alcohol issues took place with me when I was retired, one of many times, because I wasn't happy. I was, as much as I had low self-esteem. I didn't feel good about myself. And when I tried or was offered cocaine, tried, it was that one of those missing ingredients that I needed to feel better about myself. Then the alcohol became an issue because alcohol to me, alcohol and cocaine mix very well. So good supplements, good ingredients. But I nearly lost it. I nearly went over the bridge because I did it every single day. But a friend of mine, James Anderson, who was my security guy.
Oh, that's my man too, James Anderson.
James Anderson. He said, Ray, because he wasn't afraid to tell me right from wrong. He said, Ray, you know what? Forget about you. The hell with you. Think about your parents. Think about your kids. And they see you get locked up because you're drunk driving or you're doing too much drugs, whatever. He said, hell with you. Look in the mirror, see who you find. And I looked in the mirror that night, later on that night. I cried like a baby because I said, that is not the person my mother and father, you know, raised me to be. And I stopped the cocaine. Cocaine was cold turkey. Just stop doing cocaine. It was the alcohol that had me in his arms and his pit me in his claws. And I've been 15 years sober.
Amazing.
You know, and I didn't talk about this. I never brought this up to anyone. But again, I talk about this. It happened to me. The sexual abuse. I talk about it now, and I don't cry. I may shed a tear, but that's because I'm happy.
I understand that.
I'm happy.
I understand.
And I talk about it because even in my speeches, sometimes I'll bring it up. And I say, why am I doing it? Because the place gets quiet. But I feel okay now. There's so much gratitude that I have being in AA. Again, just overcoming some of the biggest fights in my life, and that was the alcohol, and that was the drugs. I did it all, man. I mean, I'm not some innocent kid or innocent guy. I've done it all. But I broke away from it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
This is a good place to be. It's a good place to be. You know, we all go through that. You know, when I was young coming up, I grew up, I had an enemy complex, and the enemy was me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I had
That's
an enemy
toughest.
complex. Enemy was me. Everybody was my enemy. My fighters, coaches, trainers. Coach couldn't come talk to me. I'll threaten his coach, his family members. All of them are my enemies. If I see them outside of this press conference, it's war. And why was I like that? Because my insecurity, my guilt, my shame, all that stuff made me a savage. I didn't have self-love, so I showed it by acting like an animal. You know, and you go through that, and you learn a different way of life. Not saying that that's a bad way of life, but that's just not my way of life anymore. You know, it's not far from me, but it's just not how I want to conduct myself anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
It's so interesting. You said, Ray, you know, you were at this place in your life where you had everything, and yet you had no self-esteem. Isn't that interesting?
Oh no, it's not interesting.
Well, I mean,
The greatest
it makes
kings,
sense.
the greatest warriors, the greatest conquerors had the smallest low self-esteem. Napoleon, Alexander the Great.
It's ancient.
They're afraid of their mother.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
Achilles, all these guys.
Yeah.
Low self-esteem. Their mothers had to tell them who they were. They're mama's boys. Can you believe that? Imagine telling them they're mama's boy.
I believe
Look
that.
Look at it. Look what they left to us over the years. How we think of them. Mama's boys.
To have the sense or the power or the will to talk about yourself in a negative way.
Derogatory.
It's hard. Derogatory. It's hard, and it gets harder sometimes, pending where you are in success. And you don't want people to know, because people assume you're weak.